For almost a year, Ulysses and his companions have been staying on Circe's island. Having faced terrible storms and wrecks orchestrated by Zeus and Poseidon, their days spent with the sorceress have been like a soothing balm applied to their wounds. It's a time for feasting and partying, meats galore and consoling wine. Ulysses and his men gradually forget their sad adventures and rediscover the same strong hearts which long ago had driven them to leave their homeland, the rocky island of Ithaca. After a year, when spring returns, Eurylochus and Polites speak to their king on behalf of all the men. Gone is the time for sharing the bed of the witch with the flowing locks every night. It's time to leave. Their destiny is to return to the homes of their fathers. And for Ulysses, that of the beautiful Penelope, his son Telemachus, and, if the gods wish him a long life, his father Laertes. If it were up to Ulysses, he would willingly stay with the sorceress. After all, what good will it do to go home after so many years? Surely nobody believes they're still alive. But the pain and sorrow of his men tugs at his heart. He announces his departure to Circe. The witch goddess knew this day would come. She promised Ulysses on the night they met to free him and his men. She will thus keep her word. But there remains one big obstacle. The Greeks are lost. Before washing up on Circe's island, they had been buffeted in all directions on the seas. Today, they have no idea which course to set to return to Ithaca. Circe looks Ulysses in the eye. Does he truly believe that abandoning the daughter of the sun, a goddess with the powers of a witch, will take him back home? Alas, no. Circe tells him what she knows of his future. Not very much, to be honest, because not even the gods know what the fates have in store for them, let alone for mere mortals. But Ulysses' fate, if he leaves this island, is not to return to Ithaca. His route will lead him elsewhere, to a place that nobody wishes to enter before their time. A place to which only Circe knows the way. A terrifying place, the name of which is enough to fill anyone who hears it with fear. This place is ruled by the almighty Hades and his wife, the fearsome Persephone, the underworld. Ulysses' head spins. The underworld, the place of no return, the home of the dead, of wandering souls and shades, those who have been deserted by life forever. Has his time come? No, replies Circe. She tells him that long ago an oracle announced to her the coming of Ulysses and his departure one day for his homeland. The oracle specified that the route home could only be indicated to him by one man, Tiresias the prophet. But Tiresias is dead. Only his story remains. And this story Ulysses knows. like all the Greeks. Long ago, Tiresias was still just a young man when one day his route took him across Mount Citterion in Arcadia. Along the way, he spotted two entwined snakes. The snakes were coupling. Maybe for fun, or maybe by carelessness, Tiresias struck the snakes with his staff, and the female died on the spot. At that very moment, Tiresias felt his body began to transform. Struck with fear, he began to witness his own metamorphosis, from a handsome young man into a woman. A very beautiful young woman. A very beautiful young woman with an unquenchable sexual appetite. So much so that she sold her charms throughout Greece, thus becoming the most famous prostitute in the land. 7 years later on her path, the beautiful Tiresias once again came across two copulating snakes. This time, she trampled on them, and this time, the male was killed. Tiresias immediately felt her body changing and became a man again. But Tiresias' life became truly complicated the day he was summoned by the gods. Hera was consistently reproaching her husband Zeus for his numerous infidelities. The god of gods had never denied these, and as everyone knows, he always proved himself to be more than capable, giving glorious children to beautiful mortal women across the world. No, Zeus denied nothing, but he defended his exploits by stating that when Hera shares his bed, she is left most sated, because clearly he claims, in the sexual act, the woman takes much more pleasure than the man. Hera exploded and rejected her husband's claims. It's the exact opposite. The man takes much more pleasure than the woman. The disagreement, fed by Hera's anger, soon became a quarrel. To settle the dispute, Zeus and Hera decided to ask the only living being which had lived as both a man and a woman, Tiresias. So there he was on Olympus, in the tribunal of the gods. Without doubt, Tiresias must know the answer to the question, as he had experienced a sexual act as two genders. But filled with fear, Tiresias trembled before the master of Olympus and sided with him. If pleasure were divided into 10 equal parts, then women obtained 9 and men only 1. Zeus was satisfied, but Hera was seething. She threw a curse on Tiresias, condemning his eyes to eternal darkness. The mortal who had seen the gods would never see them again. Zeus, accustomed to his wife's outbursts, dared not oppose her. But he found it unjust that Tiresias should pay so high a price for her anger. He is blind, so be it. But the god of gods gave him the gift of prophecy and a life that would extend over 7 generations. And thus, Tiresias, the blind prophet, crisscrossed all of Greece. He saw the heroes who would mark history with their feats come of age: Theseus in Athens, Heracles in Argos, Jason in Iolcus, and Oedipus in Thebes. But the 7 generations have passed, and Tiresias is no more. Circe confirms this. The blind prophet now resides in the realm of Hades, in the infamous underworld. It's there that Ulysses must go to consult with him. Only Tiresias can tell him how to return home to Ithaca, because Hades and his wife Persephone have allowed Tiresias, and him alone, to keep his wisdom and the gift of prophecy. The other dead are mere shades, and Ulysses should be wary of them. From the shore, Circe watches Ulysses' fleet sail off. She summons Boreas and Antiboreas, the 2 wind gods, which when they blow together send ships to the place, the name of which nobody can utter without trembling in fear: the gates of hell. Circe knows she will never set eyes on Ulysses again. Here they are nearing the place indicated by Circe, the mysterious land of the Cimmerians. Ulysses and his crew fall into silence as they contemplate a landscape of dead trees that look like wandering phantoms. The rays of the sun never reach here. There reigns over the entire region eternal night. Their faces betray their dread, a dread deep in their stomachs that none of them have ever felt, not even before the terrible battles against their Trojan enemy. The fleet sails up the river Ocean, the mother of all rivers, which rises from the hidden depths of Gaia, the Earth Mother, and which gives birth to all the other waterways across the world. Their progress is slow, never-ending. Putrid stenches mingle with the darkness. But soon, they reach the edge of a smoke-spewing abyss. Ulysses draws his sword and uses it to dig a ditch. Then he recites the prayer of the dead and makes an offering of 3 libations, as is the custom. He calls for Tiresias and promises him that the moment he reaches home in far-off Ithaca, he will sacrifice the finest ram from his flocks in his honor. Then, he seizes the immaculate ewe and lamb given to them by Circe and cuts their throats above the abyss. The blood flows down into the bowels of the earth, and the sound of mournful chanting rises with the swirls of sulfur-smelling smoke. One by one, the souls of the dead approach, gaunt and grimacing. They are young virgin girls, men and women in the prime of life, old men wasted by life, warriors still covered in blood, victims of the wrath of Ares. Ulysses conceals his fear. He orders his men to continue the sacrifice in honor of Tiresias. With his sword, he prevents the crowd of dead from approaching the blood spilled for the blind prophet. But the dead slowly surround the sailors. They are desperate to taste the dark blood of the sacrifice, which will bring back for a few fleeting instants a memory of their former life force. How dare he? The master of Olympus enters into one of his rages, feared even by the other gods and goddesses. Across the entire earth, the sky covers and darkness reigns. Zeus is furious. A mortal has just broken the sacred law that forbids a living soul from entering the underworld. What's more, he was invited by a goddess, Circe. And this impious soul is protected by an even more powerful goddess, his own daughter, Athena. And his last-born son, Hermes, has sided with her. No doubt Hades and Persephone are delighting in the fact that a mere mortal is defying Zeus. Never have the gods so openly bestowed such favors on a mortal. And to top it all, this mortal, Ulysses, is convinced the gods have failed men, that they have abandoned men, and that men, in return, should no longer expect anything from them. Ulysses represents a huge danger for the gods with his defiance and law-breaking. From Ulysses' hardened heart, fear and belief, until now inseparably linked so that the gods were revered, have vanished. And now, it's the very reign of the gods of Olympus that Ulysses has called into doubt by entering the underworld. To consult not with a god, but with the shade of a mere mortal to whom Zeus himself has afforded the gift of reading the future. Athena is not afraid of her father's anger. She explains to him that the visit to the underworld is a test, one of the many Ulysses has had to face on the demands of Zeus himself. As usual, she says, Zeus didn't want to adjudicate on a dispute between Athena and Poseidon regarding Ulysses. He agreed, as always, to a compromise. Faced with Poseidon, who desperately wants the death of Ulysses, and Athena, who wants his survival, Zeus preferred a halfway decision. Ulysses, he declared, will not die, but he will suffer like no man has ever suffered before. Let us allow Ulysses to continue his journey, insists Athena. It could be the best way to bring him back to the faith of his ancestors. If, as a mere mortal, he manages to pass through the underworld, if he is subjected once again to the terrible fate reserved for him by the sea, and if Athena and Hermes can watch over him and inspire in him new ruses to rediscover the route home, then it won't be to a blind prophet that he makes sacrifices, but to almighty gods, the Olympians, who have saved him from the misfortunes he has been victim to. His belief in the gods of Olympus will be reborn, stronger than ever. In the face of his daughter's pugnacity, Zeus once again gives up. Does he have any other choice? Sword in hand, Ulysses continues to prevent the dead from approaching the blood offered to Tiresias until he has appeared. But suddenly, he freezes. A silhouette has stepped out of the darkness. Ulysses can't believe his eyes, and yet there's no mistaking her, his mother, Anticlea. When he left for Troy more than 10 years ago, she was still alive. What is she doing here, now, in this dreadful place? Anticlea is also surprised. What is her son, who seems so full of life, doing here among the dead and the shades? So Ulysses begins to tell her of his wanderings across the seas and the reason for his presence in this foul place. Then he bombards her with questions. By which cruel fate did she find herself in the underworld? What news of his aged father Laertes, his wife Penelope, and his son Telemachus? Grief, replies Anticlea. Grief, regret, worry. It was Ulysses' absence that got the better of her. As for Penelope, there is no fear, at least not for the moment, because Penelope still loves him, is still waiting for him. She weeps every night when the ships return to port, hoping every time that one of them will bring news of him. Laertes is still alive, but weak and despondent. Unable to contain himself, Ulysses tries to embrace his mother, but barely has he stretched out his arms, then the shade of Anticlea vanishes like a dream. Finally, the shade of an old man appears above the others, wrapped in a cloak of mist. Tiresias. The blind prophet is holding a golden scepter. Ulysses steps forward, prudently, fearing that the figure, like the shade of his mother, might vanish forever. He begins to question the prophet. Tiresias replies, Poseidon cannot forgive Ulysses for blinding his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. Zeus, too, is filled with rage. Ulysses has drawn their hostility. The route that will take him back to Ithaca passes the islands of the fearsome Sirens. Then the rocks Scylla and Charybdis, two sea monsters that devour any ships that approach them. Ulysses can take this route and survive it, if he remembers that he's a man of 1,000 guiles, the man of many strategies. Then his fleet can harbor off the island of Thrinacia. There, they will see magnificent herds of cattle grazing in meadows. They belong to Helios, the god of the sun. He must not lay a finger on them under any circumstances, or terrible, irremediable misfortunes will befall them. They will all die, one by one, and his entire fleet will be sunk. If, by a miracle, Ulysses manages to escape, he will reach Ithaca, but alone. And once there, he will be stricken with further misfortunes. Ulysses listens in silence. He will follow Tiresias' instructions to the letter. But regarding the curses of the gods, he merely shrugs his shoulders. Since the terrible Trojan War, the gods no longer have the powers that Tiresias claims. They belong to a bygone world. Suddenly, a deep rumble rises from below. Tiresias is struck with fear. The dead rush in all directions in panic, as if some dangerous evil were rearing its ugly head. Because they know full well, in the depths of hell, live things more terrifying than the gods. Creatures of old that can be awoken by a simple shrug of a mortal's shoulders.